So I'm coming in at this from a different angle because I'm not a historian. But that doesn't mean I don't have a lot of historical background. It's been of interest to me all my life. And one of the things that I'm very well aware of is that James VI and first genuinely believed his mother was a witch because he was taught that his mother was a witch by the Presbyterian lords that stole him from his mother from Stirling Castle. His mother was Mary Queen of Scots. So the religious war that was on then was enormous. And also the witches in Shakespeare's play were written for James, who studied the occult, and he used his perceptions to create the King James Bible. So when we're looking at whether or not in the 21st century we are affected by in any way what went on when people were accused of being witches, tried and murdered, we're still living in the 21st century in any churches that use the King James Bible with one of the fundamental background noises to the beliefs that people had about what it was possible for witches to do. And I'm coming at this from the place of knowing that it's still extremely hard in the 21st century for anyone to say out loud, hello, I am a witch. Because people don't know what you mean when they say that. Because they're still busy dealing with green faces, Halloween and the Wicked Witch of the West. And I assure you, I'm very capable of playing the Wicked Witch of the West. However, it's also truly true that if you believe in magic, if you actually trust that your shamanic being can affect, in conjunction with nature, that which happens in the world, the last thing in the world you do is wish anyone ill, because it's one of the fundamental precepts of magic. The ill wishing comes back upon the wisher. And it might not be tomorrow it comes back, but when it comes back 100-fold. And whams you straight in the face when the last thing in the world you expect is to be whammed straight in the face. And I'm not saying that as something I pretend I believe. It's something I have researched in many different levels. I would like to read you this poem. I think it's a poem. It is written by a woman called Sherry Kennan, and she's addressing it to the people of Forres, where there were quite a few women killed as witches. So what Sherry Kennan says is, it was not witches who burned, it was women. I also acknowledge there were men. But mostly it was women who were seen as too beautiful, too outspoken, had too much water in the well, yes, seriously, who had a birthmark, women who were too skilled with herbal medicine, too loud, too quiet, too much red in her hair, women who had a strong nature connection, women who danced, women who sung, or anything else really. Sisters testified and turned on each other when their babies were held under ice. Children were tortured to confess their experiences with witches by being fake executed in ovens. Women were held underwater, and if they float, they were guilty and executed. If they sunk and drowned, they were innocent. Women were thrown off cliffs. Women were put in deep holes in the ground. The start of this madness was years of famine, war between religions, and lots of fear. The churches said that witches, demons, and the devil did exist, and women were nothing but trouble. As we see even today, There is often a scapegoat created. Everything connected to a woman became feared, especially her sexuality. It became labelled as dark and dangerous, and was the core of the witch trials throughout the world. Why do I write this? Because I think the usage of words are important, especially when we are doing the work to pull these murky, repressed and forgotten about stories to the surface. Because knowing our history is important when we are building the new world, when we are doing the healing work of our lineages, and as a redress, to give the women who were slaughtered a voice, to give them a chance of peace. It was not witches who burned, it was women, it was men, it was people. And I think that that's a really important layer of the recognition that we're trying to bring by having memorials, by speaking aloud about the injustice. But I also know someone, her name is Helen, and she was the clan mother of Clan Daliada living on Arran. And Clan Daliada used Druid practices. And Helen is a woman whose family is of the old religion historically. And when they were practicing by gathering together and being in circles in nature, the local Baptist minister was accusing them of devil worship 20 years ago. I have a friend called Frank Pilkington who is a psychic astrologer, and he is genuinely incredibly psychic. And when he was interviewed on television at one point, he was interviewed by someone who had also a Presbyterian minister on with him, who accused him of being a son of the devil. So what we're trying to do, I think, is change a mode of thinking which was ingrained in our psyches by this period in time when women and men were being accused of being witches, most of whom were not actually witches at all, but who were painted as black as the ace of spades. And I don't use that in the terms of people of colour, but the way in which we in the Western world contrast black with white. But if you're a white witch and you talk to the animals, if you connect with nature, if you work with herbs, if you believe that distance healing is possible, if you have a hands-on Reiki master, if you do yoga, if you work with your own consciousness to disappear old myths and release your creative intelligence, if you are a creator of poetry or artwork or music and you are inspired, then you would definitely be a major candidate for burning. As a friend of mine says, they don't physically burn me now. They just burn into you with accusation. And this is a poem by someone called Hafiz. I know the way you can get when you have not had a drink of love. Your face hardens, your sweet muscles cramp. Children become concerned about a strange look that appears in your eyes, which even begins to worry your own mirror and nose. Squirrels and birds sense your sadness and call an important conference in a tall tree. They decide which secret code to chant to help your mind and soul. Even angels fear that brand of madness that arrays itself against the world and throws sharp stones and spears into the innocent and into oneself. Oh, I know the way you can get if you have not been drinking love. You might rip apart every sentence your friends and teachers say, looking for hidden clauses. You might weigh every word on a scale like a dead fish. You might pull out a ruler to measure from every angle in your darkness the beautiful dimensions of a heart you once trusted. I know the way you can get if you have not had a drink from love's hands. That is why all the great ones speak of the vital need to keep remembering God. And of course, as God, this could be goddess, it could be humanity's great heart, it could be green cheese. But you will come to know and see love as being so playful and wanting, just wanting to help. That is why Happy says, bring your cup near me, for all I care about is quenching your thirst to freedom. All a sane man can ever care about is giving love. And still, hundreds of years on, from these dreadful, hate-filled, unkind, unjust trials, we are still dealing in humanity with hate-filled, fear-based, unjust actions happening on our watch. And so a lot of the people that I know, the beings that we are releasing ourselves into the world after having hidden a long time. We hide because we are still in our DNA, afraid of being accused of being witches and hounded. A lot of the time, actually, the hounding is, as with Frank, to accuse him of being a charlatan, as they did with Helen Duncan, who was actually seeing young men who had drowned in submarines off the German coast in the Baltic Sea, and telling their mothers that their sons weren't coming back, which is why she was jailed by Winston Churchill and his team, who had also requested the Wiccan circles of Britain to protect the coastline. So what we're asking for is a depth of awareness and honesty, a connection with nature and with love. And that in that love, we remember the thousands of beings who were sacrificed to a belief in patriarchy, paid doctors, and jealous, envious, fear-based criticism. So it's my suspicion that doing without jealous, envious, fear-based criticism is a good thing. And that our developing our capacity to see beyond the collective trauma in which we are all held is quite important. And collective trauma is something that Thomas Hubbell's been working on all over the world, where what's happening is that one is affected by something that is so deeply in one's culture that one does not notice it is part of the way we think, the way we move in the world. For me to get to a point where I could actually recognize who I am, I had to do a lot of co-counseling, which is a kind of peer-based therapy. I've studied just about every religion in the world. I've paid attention to nature. Spent quite a lot of time with the Findhorn Foundation, which is why the forest poem interested me. And I know that It gets tiring being told, I don't exist. Our connected, intuitive response to nature is just our imagination. When nature genuinely does talk, when the earth speaks, the wind sings, the air whispers, the fire crackles and clears, and that we are all imbued with nature. We are integral to it, not separate from it. And because we are aware of that, we are also aware of our connections through our DNA to all our ancestors, and through the air that we breathe to every other being on the planet. And therefore it's important that we acknowledge that in the land of the seers, it was the seers that were murdered if they could get a hold of them. And if they weren't, they just murdered anybody that they thought was a bit too mouthy. Yo ho, I'm finished.